Hi, I'm Kelsey Elizabeth Myers, the founder of Dialogical Persona Healing Arts and a coach. I do a lot of expressive arts and trauma healing work, and I just wanted to come on to the group here, Women Saving Lives, and share more about my own journey through the healing arts, as well as my upcoming workshop series, Embodying Stories. I just started this series last month in November to help people embody their stories of grief. I did that because recently my 17 and a half year old Persian cat, Kierkegaard Kiki Mao, passed in October, and I had been preparing and sort of honoring the fact that I knew she would be leaving me soon for about a year and a half prior to that. And still, the loss of her really propelled my grief and my own ability to express my grief in ways that was really surprising for me. I also turned 40 years old in October, and I sort of since the time I was 10 in middle school and started watching shows like Sex and the City, and I grew up watching movies like Beaches, I just felt like that idea of female friendship and the vibrancy and empowerment of being a woman really comes alive in your 40s and 50s, and I had really been looking forward to that most of my life and planning for that. And as I have been living sort of my 40th year this year, I found that I did feel more like an adult or had this maturity and growth that was still surprising, even though I had connected with that from a young age. The lessons, the losses, I also experienced the disillusion of a really close, intimate, deep friendship for the past 8 years, and that happened over the summer. And while that loss was really rich and did kind of throw me for a few months this summer, I was able to really embody my own feelings and my own beliefs and my own expressions of that, separate from what she thought and felt and was saying about the relationship and about my personal reasons for having issues with it, and being able to sort of stay centered and grounded within my own story, and also in trying to grieve and hold compassion for hers. That also taught me so much and showed me how much of the growth that I've experienced while learning how to really embody what I was feeling and be able to hold it and be able to contain it and express it in ways that aren't necessarily with the other person, but just for me. Like drawing a new 8 foot self portrait, and being able to dance with the wings that she gave me around different parts of the city here and have that videoed and write poetry about it, was those were the ways that I love to express myself, and that I've learned when applied to our own stories, our own psychological material, our own emotions, can really help to either integrate or release them. And so grief was really present for me from the summer through the fall and moving into this holiday season with winter. I've also felt that there's been a lot of anger, and not necessarily anger over, to her, although that did happen with the dissolution of the friendship and the deep connection that we've fostered for so many years, but just the anger at and the frustration at just not being able to have that anymore, and to be able to express things to her, or, so just being able to express them for me. And as a Korean adoptee, I was surrendered at birth right at birth, and then was in foster care in Korea, in Busan, for about 3 months before being allowed to fly to my parents well, January 12th, 1985 was the exact date that they received me. And I had been experiencing a lot of different struggles with my own identity through my teenage and early to mid 20s. And I'd had some experiences with racism, with not fitting into the Asian American community because I didn't have that cultural background or cultural understanding that can connect people. And so feeling very isolated and alienated from different communities in my youth, that created this desire to belong, to be seen, to be understood, to be heard. And so it wasn't until I kind of got through school, I majored in English writing and philosophy, and then I did two master's degrees in creative writing, one in poetry and one in nonfiction, uh, here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And that really, kind of being on my own, I grew up in West Michigan, so most of my family is still there, and then literally being isolated rather than sort of emotionally isolated really, um I just felt very disconnected, and I was very disembodied at that time because I'd spent so many years in school just living a life of learning, education, being in my head and being in the thinking mind, especially writing and philosophy, is all very mental. So when I was doing the dating thing and dating older women and really kind of confronting that mother wound and that longing of sort of the absence of that primal connection, I found that I was attracted to much older women, and that a lot of the dating groups that I found myself in, just like, when you're a teenager, most people are doing that then, but I, was attracted to all the wrong kinds of people and got into a lot of very toxic, emotionally abusive, some almost physically abusive, and one that was very sexually abusive relationships in my early dating life in my early 30s. So that kind of brought me to this awakening of, oh, so I am so disconnected to my body. I can't really even feel it. I actually had to be told by my somatic experiencing practitioner at the time that I had been sexually assaulted because I was so disembodied and disconnected from my own, awareness of my senses and my body. So through learning different expressive arts modalities, particularly with somatic and conscious dance communities out here in the Bay Area, I really learned how to start being aware of my body, of the sensations in my body, and then eventually being able to feel my body. It was a, I think about 3 years before I could actually feel all of my body parts, and my hips were actually the last ones that I felt. And so I went through this journey of exploring through each body part, through each, um, like your head, your hands, your heart, your feet, your legs, just really exploring in isolation each body part, what stories, what emotions, what thoughts and beliefs were held there. And then through the Tumulpa Institute um, life art process that I've trained in, I learned how to actually um, draw either in abstract ways or even sometimes anatomically almost correct, because I can't really do the full correctness, but as close as I could get, to like drawing things like my spine, or tracing my hands, tracing my feet. But the drawings that I found the most, um, I guess, healing or powerful for me in my own process were the ones that were part of those, each segment of exploring my different body parts, but really were more abstract or were more visual about the inner landscape that I was exploring within myself. So, one example is when I was drawing sort of my heart and lungs, what was there was this golden kaleidoscope, and I used the clean language facilitation I was training in within another program, called the Academy for Soul-Based Coaching, that I was kind of doing concurrently with these expressive arts trainings, to explore what that golden kaleidoscope really was for me. And I asked myself, questions like, when my heart is like a golden kaleidoscope, that is like what? And I kept following that down until what came was trust. And so that this golden kaleidoscope in my heart I could look into it when I needed to and see like what was there and what I could trust or what I was working with. And that became a resource for me as I was learning to trust myself again, about when to check in with that. And if what I was seeing was in my heart, then I could trust that. Or if it was in another body part, then maybe some further investigation needed to happen. So, what I learned through that was that, we have these inner symbols or metaphors or entire landscapes within us that are telling their own stories. And sometimes we know what they mean. Sometimes we can do some inner exploration or work with external coaches, or in my case, I worked with the soul based coaching. I had a soul based coach, and I also had a somatic experiencing practitioner, and then also my former therapist. And so I could explore them with them. But also, there were times that I just didn't know what the landscape meant, but I could just allow it to move through that specific body part that it was happening in. And the next day, I would just feel different. And I didn't even know why or what was moving or what each kind of piece meant, mentally, but I felt the difference in my own ability to just kind of move through my life and move through each day. So that actually taught me to trust things at a whole other level, to just trust that I didn't need to know or to be certain or to even understand necessarily what things mean, but I could still trust that I was okay, that my life was going in the way that I kind of wanted at the time, and that it would end up all right. So I learned to trust in that way as well, just through these explorations with the arts and with that deep connection to my own inner being. So, through all of that, I found that this is really the power of the healing arts, that it returns us to who we are beneath all of those kind of social, cultural identifications, which are still very important to me. I still, love being a Korean adoptee. I love being part of the Asian American community. I love being part of the lesbian community. I have these identifications that are very much a part of who I am, and I find very important in the work that I do. Because to many people, especially if a part of your identity is marginalized, that is a part of your day-to-day life. It is part of living, in this world that we're in. And I think that it's also very powerful. And, I'm not one of those sort of, I love spirituality, but I'm not one of those spiritual people who is like, we are who we are, and those identities and those labels don't matter, because they have in my life and they do still matter to me. And at the same time, I know now that there's also, my soul speaks in a different language. It speaks in these psychological and sort of beautiful metaphors and symbols and art forms. And that there's also, that deeper spiritual connectedness of, being part of the oneness, being part of that wholeness, and really allowing myself to be a whole person. As a young philosophy major, I loved existentialism, I loved deconstruction, I love all the postmodern theories, and I grew up in a postmodern world, being a child in I was born in the 80s, so being a child in the 90s, that was sort of the ruling um, theory and worldview of much of the 90s and early 2000s. So I grew up in that, and I'm also very much a part of and still believe in all of that sort of, um, you know, pulling apart and interrogating and playing with different parts of ourselves. And that is a big part of my work with dialogical persona, is that ability to deconstruct our symbols, deconstruct our metaphors, and work and play and be with them. And also, I can feel like a whole person now for, I mean, all through my 20s. Much of my writing, much of my self reflection, all of my journaling was about, being fragmented and not whole and just having parts or pieces to work with. So through these expressive arts and through building up these inner resources in the different parts of my body, in isolation and as a totality, I do now actually feel like a whole person, and I can be in touch with that wholeness and express that wholeness as well, which, is one of the most surprising things for me, because I mean, just as an adoptee, I know many adoptees too who just still don't have that. They love and live in that fragmentation, and I used to be one of them. And now I just love and live in my wholeness, which, while also still really valuing that ability to be within the pieces and be within the fragments, and find or create or develop some sort of whole, new whole, and beautiful whole within that. So, for me, that has been a defining part of my work, um, my own personal work, but also just my artistic work and my writing and my poetry. So all of these things have been kind of with me, and as I have been growing and learning and working with them through my 30s and now into my 40s, I still feel like there's this richness and these pieces that I'm working with and learning. So as I thought about more ways this year, going into 2025, but also just sort of ending and culminating this year that I turned 40, I was thinking, well, I want to be more visible. I want to be more connected with people. And I want to share more about my work and my story with people, and really what that means and what that looks like. So, as I was kind of wrestling with those things through the fall, I thought, well, at heart, I've always been really drawn to words, to symbols, to metaphors, and to stories. And how do I sort of bridge that with the embodiment work? And so, the easy title of Embodying Stories came to me. And I really like that, because that's really what I did. And that's what so many of us do, that we live out our stories. We live life through stories. It's how we understand ourselves and make meaning out of things. And in the healing world, it can kind of get a bad rap because people mean it like, old patterns that we need a breakthrough or that keep us stuck. And yeah, I think that is part of stories when they are psychological, is that they can keep us in one frame of mind. But that's why I like the idea of stories plural, because we have many stories. And so here's where the postmodern piece kind of comes through, is that, there are many different ways of viewing even just one story, but then we're also living out different stories at the same time. And bringing more attention and awareness and focus can open up our frame of mind to be able to see them, to be able to see the other perspectives, to be able to work with them. And so in these workshops that I've started, we're really on an individual journey together in the Zoom room, um, seeing what stories are coming up while doing these kind of either guided visualizations, self reflective journaling, creative writing, movement. We are sort of with what's coming up individually, but then there is time to connect with others. There's time to share that. There's time to kind of broaden that and open and widen our own perspectives. And that, I think, is really the power of stories. I use one of my favorite writers, Joan Didion's quote: "We tell ourselves stories in order to live." And really, I think we tell ourselves stories in order to become things as well, in order to be things, in order to understand. And that is one way that as human beings we can make meaning out of our lives. So I really value the empowerment of stories, as well as sort of the way that if we do get stuck in a story, it can, lead us down a path that we don't want, or that is no longer serving us. So really working with both frameworks for understanding stories. And that's part of what I also learned through my own journey to become embodied, is that, my body might be experiencing one thing and my feelings might be something else. And then what I'm imagining, or the thoughts or beliefs I have about that, could be something else entirely. And if we're not in alignment on these different levels, then that does lead to sort of avoidance, procrastination, anxiety, or feeling like we're at war with ourselves. So it can keep us stuck in ways that we don't necessarily want to be doing in life. And if we're not aware of what's happening on all of those levels and more, spiritual, soulful, then there isn't that alignment. And when there is that alignment, when there is that awareness, that we can really act within full authenticity and full expression of what we really want to be doing. So that's sort of the goal of this workshop series, is to just create and broaden and expand our awareness of all of what's happening within us on multiple levels, so that we can come into that alignment or integrity or way of expressing ourselves that feels like we're fully on board, or our whole self can be invested. And so this month in December, Sunday, December 15th, from 3 to 4:30 is my next workshop, and that is going to be focused on embodying stories of anger. And as I mentioned, like, anger for me is something that comes up when I experience a loss, and that is probably connected to being an adoptee and sort of that original wound at birth of being surrendered and not having my needs met by that primary caregiver of my birth mother, and the frustration and the anger. But through my childhood, I had a very loving and close, and was sort of even best friends with my mother, my adoptive mother, growing up. So I had a lot of support too from my extended family, like cousins, and um, so it was a very kind of close, loving, supportive family. And one way that my family, particularly my parents and I, expressed our anger was verbally, shouting and yelling and expressing it and just letting it be seen and felt and expressed outwardly. But what we didn't do was blame each other or really, if there was, name calling, which occasionally there was because we have high tempers, but um, it wasn't really pointed at the person. And we all knew that because we loved each other and we were very connected. And we all understood and expressed ourselves in that way. Um, on the Chinese zodiac, we're all rats. I'm a wood rat. My parents are earth rats. So, if you know anything about Chinese astrology, rats are very verbose and aggressive and prone to sort of verbal communication. And so I always felt like even though we weren't biologically related, that outward expression of anger was something we all had in common. So we didn't take anything personally for the most part. My mom, in particular, tends to cross a little bit more lines than my dad and I. Emotionally. But for the most part, I mean, it was just very much not taken personally so that we could just express it. And we would get into these screaming arguments in the middle of the mall. People would stop and watch us, and then once it was fully expressed, we were fine, and we'd go home and have dinner, and it would just be like a normal dinner conversation. So that was one way in my youth and kind of growing up that I was sort of seen, felt, and met in my anger because my parents are very similar to me in that sense. And I had to learn sort of in, my dating life and in relationships, not everyone has that background where, people did feel like lines were crossed where they could be, into violence or just where it was a personal attack. So they don't express anger. They would be very afraid of it. And so in seeing sort of the different ways that people respond to my anger, but also just anger in general, and learning, through my clients, just how afraid they are to really even own their own anger has been very eye opening for me. And so that's part of why I wanted to offer this workshop on anger and why I love to kind of offer more expressions of anger within the work that I do, because I think that's really important when, your anger can actually be expressed and met, without it instigating, more argument or kind of spiraling or derailing into just non-productive aspects of anger. But when you can really authentically fully express your anger, have it met, and then just, it's no longer there because it was expressed. And so often I see with my clients or with people in my personal life, it's suppressed, and people feel a lot of shame around it. They don't want to express it. They feel like it's wrong and that they should just be sad or they should just be grieving because that's the better expression. That's, the more spiritual expression. That means that they've done more work on themselves. And, that is sort of in spiritual circles one way that some people like to teach spirituality. But it doesn't mean you've done more work. In fact, in my opinion, you've done less work on yourself because anger is a natural part of, being human. It is a very natural emotion. It isn't, greater than or lesser than any other emotion. And any ways that we cut off or stop expressing ourselves, we cut off those parts or those aspects of ourselves. And again, when we have those pieces or those fragments that aren't in total alignment, then we can't feel whole. So this is one reason that I think it's important to work particularly with the emotion of anger, because it does have such a strong reaction and feeling and relationship for everyone in different ways. And so I'm really excited about doing this Sunday, and I will continue to kind of do that in more embodying stories workshops and in more of the work that I do. I have found since, just launching this series last month that it is really connecting with people because they can feel that, they can feel their stories and their lives that desire to really embody them so that they can complete or integrate or release or, whatever they need to do. And that the work has really touched and helped them to hold more space for whatever it is that's arising within them. I had a very small workshop last November, actually, but one of the participants was so moved that she presented it to her church congregation, and helped me write a proposal to do a much larger in-person workshop on that. And that is something that I would love to do with this series. So if you know anyone or if you have a community that could benefit, I am always willing to do longer in-person workshops as well on any of these themes or these emotions that are arising. So that's another aspect of the series that I wasn't even really anticipating when I founded it, but really just has come up and that I'm really excited about pursuing next year. So I do, speaking of next year, I will be doing Hope in January, Self Love in February, um, Power in March, and then Peace on Easter Sunday in April, because I did decide to do it the third Sunday of each month, which happened to be Easter. So if you don't celebrate Easter, or if you'll also be alone on Easter, you can come to that one. And then I'll be advertising sort of the next set of emotions to explore after that. So if you also think of one that's arising for you that you'd like me to explore, I can add that in. So just let me know in the comments or send me a private message, um, or you can always reach me through my website, dialogicalpersona.com, as well. And so this is sort of really the foundation of this work that I'm doing, and I just wanted to share more in depth about that. And I can't really see questions on this live screen that I have. So if you have any questions or comments, I will of course get to them, and you can just add them to this post. And I know I have some more time, so I just wanted to share sort of a brief way that I have learned to kind of connect with myself and to connect with my own center when I'm feeling sort of pulled in different directions, or pulled more into the fragmentation rather than that fullness of self, in an embodied way. And in the work that I do, when there's more time, or if there's like a longer workshop, I've done this for just 3 hours, and so there's a lot more kind of just laying on the floor or doing more movement based things, but just as a way to kind of get into that space or into that feeling of, okay, this is me, this is my body, this is what's present for me in the moment. A seated version of that is really just to sit, and if your legs touch the floor, mine don't, you can have them on the ground. Otherwise, just sit in a comfortable position. And if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes and just do a palming technique of rubbing your hands together to generate some heat. And once you feel like there's some heat and energy moving, just kind of cup them over your eyes and really bring that heat and energy in through your eyes and have it travel down your whole body to your toes. And then when you're ready, you can just sort of slowly massage the front of your face. You can either imagine your fingertips as paintbrushes, just painting that energy and that heat through. And of course, do this in your own timing, your own pacing, really just allowing yourself to feel some gentle, loving touch anywhere that you need to on your face. And when you feel ready, you can kind of expand it to your hair, to your scalp, to the back of your head and neck as you feel called. Again, just really listening and inviting in that awareness of your fingers on your skin, on whichever body part you're at. And again, you can do this with your eyes open or closed. It's really just about that connection to yourself and what you need in this moment. And I've been told that women, especially, can hold a lot of tension through their sort of upper ribs and that upper chest breastbone area. And you can sort of feel the ridges there in, the where the ribs kind of go through, and just sort of pressing in and then resting your fingers in those spaces can have a gentle calming quality for that tension that's held there. And if that doesn't feel good, then, just do what does feel good or what your body needs. But really just allowing yourself to connect to this part of your body and shoulders, arms and hands. I like to brush them. Some people really like that kind of a deeper kind of movement or workout, and so they do like gentle tapping with their fists to kind of break up energy. But again, doing what works for you and your body, and really being able to know which feels better, what feels good, and really only doing that. And then, yeah, if you can reach sort of the backs of your shoulders, just bringing some awareness to our back bodies, that especially when we're on these Zooms and lives, our back can be ignored. And so just bringing some loving awareness and touch to your spine, to your back, to how it feels and what feels good to that back. You can still kind of tap with your fists, or again, brush as if your fingers are paintbrushes. And just kind of paying attention to your stomach, solar plexus, hip area. And I like to kind of rub my belly, which is not shown on camera, but that is exactly what I'm doing right now. And kind of going down to your thighs, the sides of your legs, all the way down to your feet. Because my feet don't touch the ground and I'm sitting cross-legged, I can reach them more easily, but just do whatever feels good and natural, and again, isn't painful for your body. And when you've kind of connected with each part and each side of your legs and feet, Just notice if there's any part of your body that's still feeling like, oh, I didn't get touched, or I didn't get that gentle awareness, and go there. And if you have, covered your whole body and there's still a part that wants some more attention, just give it some more love and gentle touch and attention. And in my, like I said, when I do these in workshops or when I do them on my own, I can even do this for like an hour to 3 hours, and it can become more of a stretching thing. And then I move to my feet and just move through my space in my room. So, you can do this for as long or as short as you need. It can be sped up as well. um, but for me, it's just one way again to get in touch with all those parts of my body, what they might need in the moment, give them some awareness, some touch, or some pressure. It brings me a little bit more into the present moment and to feel more connected with my whole body, which, as I told you in the beginning of this, I used to not even be able to feel. Like, if when I started doing this, like, it really didn't mean anything to me because I couldn't feel the different parts of my body internally. So I was just kind of going through the motions. But now, like, it really brings me into this greater sense of presence, into being in the moment. It slows down my nervous system so that I can sort of connect and be more aware of just the natural flow of things. So it's one way to sort of center or ground within yourself. And that's what I love about, um, you know, the healing arts and the work that I do, is that it really is about just centering in what's right, what feels good, what you need in each moment for each individual person. And that can always be different, but, there is space for that deeper connection. So that is sort of what I have planned, and like I said, I can't really see the any comments or questions if you have some, but I will definitely get to them and keep tabs on this in the community. So just drop them in the space to comment if you have any, and I will get back to you. You can also reach me at my site dialogicalpersona.com. There's a book appointment page that also just has my email, so you can get in touch through that form or just directly at Kelsey at dialogicalpersona.com. And then it has all of my social stuff in the footer, so you can always connect with me that way and just send me a DM. Or you can connect with me on my profile that's here in this community. So yeah, just thank you for allowing me to have this space, Dr. Amba. It's been such a pleasure getting to connect with you and getting to know you over, the past several seasons this year. And I enjoy being able to share a bit more about my own story, about why embodying stories is really important for me, and about the healing arts work that I've been able to do through expressive arts and soul-based coaching, and all the different sort of modalities that I bring to transformation, embodiment, and self-expression. So thank you.